We'll be here momentarily. All right, welcome back, everyone. We are on item 6.10, our 11 a.m. item. I'll probably stop reading the times just because we're so off. Consideration of MOU between Lake Coast Sand and Earth Foundries, Inc. for the operation and placement of a mobile pyrolysis unit in Middletown at the west end of the Middletown wastewater treatment plant, and authorize the chair to sign the MOU. And we have Director Harder coming up for this item. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. That's really low.
There you
go. As the chair mentioned, this is an item for consideration of an MOU between Earth Foundries and Lake County Sanitation Districts. This is kind of an augment to the air curtain incinerator that's already currently down at Middletown and is modeled on the same MOU. That is a collaboration between CAL FIRE, South Lake Fire Protection District, and the county to help reduce the woody biomass that's in the county due to the dead and dying trees and lots of other reasons. This is an augment to that, and it's a collaboration between CLERC, Clear Lake Environmental Research Center, PG&E, Earth Foundries, Lake County Sanitation District, and County Admin. We've all been kind of collaborating. So there's PG&E funding, I believe it's $500,000 in order to move forward with this. And the goal is to reduce or eliminate between 2,000 and 3,000 tons of woody biomass. So the stockpiling's already begun down there. And this unit doesn't just create ash. So the air curtain incinerator just creates ash. This unit actually creates a usable byproduct. This will create biochar, and it's about a 10-to-1 reduction. So if we put in 3,000 tons of woody biomass, we'll get about 300 tons of biochar out of it. And then that biochar can be used in agriculture with further refinement into activated carbon. It could be used at water treatment plants for filtration devices, wastewater treatment plants. So there's a lot of potential here to take what is, a nuisance with all the woody biomass and use it as a resource within the county. The representatives from Earth Foundries are here if you've got any questions specifically about the process. They do have other units going in the Bay Area, so this isn't a pilot program. It's pilot up in Lake County, but it is proven technology. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on this item? Supervisor Simon?
Go ahead, Jessica. Well, obviously, it's in my district as far as the conversation goes, but all the heavy lifting has been done by Jessica and Terry and everybody else on the conversation, and also Scott moving it forward. I know that the initial conversation was, do we think this would work in Lake County? I think it brings a great opportunity for us here as we continue to grow. The area that we're talking about, too, as you said, already has a project on there, but it's also been multiple cleanup areas. The 175 project, we stacked a lot of trees that need to be removed there and other things. So it's been an area that the district is used to seeing, and I think all the conversations are happening with the right folks. Obviously, air quality being a big part of that as we move forward and get things finalized, but we've been talking about it for years. So I'm hoping today we get support from the board to move forward with this project and continue moving in that direction of biomass, tree removal, and everything else that needs to happen here. So thank you.
Air quality and CDD are both in the picture as well. So.
Right, and so that's what I was going to mention. In the MOU, it talks about Earth Foundries being responsible for the permitting, but there are a lot of things that have already been happening with county departments to make sure that that everything is compliant. Correct. And then yesterday at the Risk Reduction Authority, we had a presentation from Water Resources about an experiment using biochar locally in a couple of the creeks to monitor how it works as possible filtration for water runoff. And that's a really exciting project for us. And if it is successful, then they're going to want a local source of biochar to continue. So that is one of the opportunities for this byproduct to keep everything within the region. So it's pretty exciting.
Yes, it is. And Roger was just telling me that he's Terry has put him in contact with Angela DePalma-Dow at Water Resources. So, yeah.
And I also want to point out that this is funded by PG&E.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Green.
Thank you. Glad to hear about the involvement of CDD, but in the MOU itself, I don't see a peep of CEQA in there. And I'm also not aware of what the overlay permitting is for the Lake Osan property. So I want to be supportive, and obviously this is envisioned as something temporary, but pilot program could morph into something more permanent. So where are we at in the realm between an emergency activity, a temporary activity, and a pilot program for what's going to be a permanent facility, and what level of secret review is going to be done?
I defer to Roger on that. I know they've been dealing with CDD.
I'm not Roger, I'm Dee Dee. I'm the co-founder and majority owner of Earth Foundries. And I just wanted to point out, we're a certified women-owned business and certified B Corp benefit corporation. So we're happy to be contacted by clerk and involved in this project. We are dedicated to reducing catastrophic wildfire in California. That's our mission. And this is an incredible place to be able to show what we can do. We're trying to reduce the costs of these projects, and that's why we're trying to use the material to create a beneficial byproduct, which is the biochar, which also sequesters carbon as we go through the process. So as far as the CEQA process goes, we are in the working with clerk to prepare the application to go through CDD right now. So we don't have an answer to specifically what type of CEQA process we're going to be doing, but we expect that it will be exempt from CEQA. If you have any other specific questions about the impacts, but we have environmental professionals, both myself and from clerk, preparing those documents to submit a full package to the CDD.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? And I had a quick question, and it really makes no difference to me. I think this is something that the logic of how this helps out in Lake County is too easy to say yes already on this item, and it's something we need to move forward with. And I'm guessing, I'm just kind of thinking about the CEQA question. You're not digging anything, you're bringing equipment that's on top of land. And I do know that there are some CEQA exemptions for even just staking it down temporarily, and I know it speaks to temporary timeframes. I wanted to ask just a quick question, I guess looking for a business deal that I didn't see in there. Is there a way for that biochar to be made available at a nominal fee to our other water districts, such as not Lake Osan, but our special districts, water districts, who might be able to utilize that rather than purchasing it wholesale or retail?
Yeah, certainly. At this point, we don't have a place to put all the biochar that we're creating, and we'll be exploring either selling or giving. Of course, if we sell the biochar, then we can provide the service for cheaper. But at this point, there's not a real well-defined outlet for the biochar from Lake County.
Because I would love to see a good relationship where obviously we provide the property, you provide the service of being able to do the 3,000 tons of biomass and then some, but then also seeing how it is that we can implement the output of that product and that process to
Absolutely.
Utilize for our benefits.
It's definitely the priority and the preference to keep it in Lake County.
Perfect. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I could add to that a little bit more, Chair. The biochar is one step removed from an activated carbon, which is what we use in our water treatment facilities. But my understanding is that they're already working on a grant to pursue getting funded for that and converting that biochar to an activated carbon. But yeah, the utilization of it in our water treatment plants, as well as the other 17 surface water treatment plants that are on Clear Lake, has been a topic of discussion as well already.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we should find out this month about the status of that grant.
Awesome. We'll keep our fingers crossed for you. Supervisor Green.
Just a follow-up question on the CEQA. So I'm not aware of anything in our zoning ordinance that currently permits for the operation of an incinerator, mobile or otherwise. But you mentioned a possible CEQA exemption. Are you aware at this stage of the game whether any type of use permit is going to be required by CDD?
It's possible that a use permit will be required, yes. But there are no permanent changes to the site. So we come in for a couple of months and then we move along, and then we can come back and do it again next winter.
Thank you.
If there's no further questions, open it up to the public. And Roger, I don't know if you wanted to say anything since your name has been brought up. All right. I see no hands up in the Zoom room and no one getting up in the chamber. And I'll bring it back to the board for action. Was that a click? CAO Berger.
I would just like to remind the board that they're sitting as the Lake Sand Board of Directors, which should be included in your motion.
Thank you for that reminder.
There's no more comments, Mr. Chair. I move, sitting as the Locasan Board of Directors, I move to approve the MOU between Locasan and Earth Foundries, Inc. for the operation and placement of a mobile pyrolysis unit in Middletown at the west end of the Middletown wastewater treatment plant, commencing July 1st, 2024, for a period of 18 months through December 31st, 2025, and authorize the chair to sign the MOU.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay. We're going to move on to our 611 item, presentation of rate study for the following districts: Kelseyville Waterworks District Number 3, Northwest Regional Wastewater Collection System, and CSA 2 Spring Valley. Director Harder.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. What you have before you today is consideration or receipt of the presentation, more appropriately, of water rate studies for the four mentioned districts. We've been working with a consultant for about 6 months now.
Yeah.
Yeah, on rate analysis for all the four districts. Kelseyville has water and sewer, so it's essentially two districts. It's one district, but it's got two components to it, Spring Valley and then Northwest Sewer District. So we've been working on those rate analysis process. We've been working very closely with the Spring Valley Advisory Committee. We've gone through multiple revisions. We think we have something that they are happy with finally, after about 4 or 5 revisions. We recently presented down at the Big Valley Advisory Committee meeting, and we're here today to give you a presentation of what this rate structure looks like. So this is going to be the kickoff of the 218 process. So after the presentation, we would envision mailing out ballots the end of the first week of July, maybe July 12th. So the ballots would go out for a 45-day period for the customers in all four districts, and it would come back, and there would be the whole process with a public hearing before the board in mid-September, looking to adopt, and if the rates are adopted, to enact them for the November billing period. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Allison, and she'll go ahead and walk through the presentation.
Great. Good afternoon, board. So as Scott mentioned, we've been working on 4 separate rate studies. So the Spring Valley water rates, Kelseyville water rates, Kelseyville sewer rates, and Northwest sewer rates. So I'll walk you through those 4 in that order. We have developed a 5-year rate plan. 5 years is the Proposition 218 timeline that you're allowed to adopt in one public outreach process. Prop 218 is the governing statute for how water and sewer rates can be implemented in California. And so Scott mentioned the first rate adjustment, if approved, would go into effect for the November billing period, followed by July 1st billing periods thereafter, July, corresponding with your fiscal year cycles. So the main point is we want rates to cover costs. We want the utility systems to be financially self-supported. So we're looking at revenue increases to cover operating costs, infrastructure costs, maintain and accumulate reasonable emergency reserves. So if a water pipeline breaks, the districts have the money to replace it. And then on top of the revenue increase, we looked at rate structure. So that's how customers are charged for service. Water and sewer rates are very litigious in California. We wanted to make sure that the utility rates comply with Proposition 218, and then also comply with industry best practices as well as recent court cases. Next slide, please. So very briefly, the Spring Valley Water Utility services about 400 residential-only connections, and rates have not been increased in an extremely long time. The Spring Valley system is proposed to receive fairly significant rate impacts. However, if we account for, rates not increasing for the last decade, there's definitely some catch-up that's happening for their financial situation here. And as Scott mentioned, we've been working very closely with the advisory committee. We ran many scenarios, and this was their preferred option. So Spring Valley's water utility is operating at a deficit. So revenues are not covering costs. So that's the first phase, is to catch up to existing operating costs. And the committee asked that we allocate a portion of their property taxes to cover water utility expenses, and that's a method of phasing in water rate adjustments. So instead of doing a full freight, year one, fully cost of service basis, we're supplementing partially with property tax revenues as we go along, and that helps mitigate and phase in rate adjustments. We are also planning to rebuild reserves to have that emergency funding available for any main breaks or other contingencies. And then down below, I have a chart of the proposed revenue impacts. So it is year-over-year successive rate increases. Not every customer will get exactly the % increase there, but that's an overall system-wide average. So a lower water user would get a less of an increase. A higher water user would get more of an increase. So this chart is the proposed rate structure adjustments. All of your special districts are billed on a bi-monthly schedule, so each bill represents 2 months of service. Spring Valley currently has a $50 base charge, and that includes quite a lot of water use, 1,200 cubic feet. That's CCF. I know that's kind of jargon, but it's 12 units of water use. We do not recommend continuing a rate structure where you're including so much water use in the base fee. So right now, a person that uses only 1 unit of water and a person that uses 12 units of water pay the same bill, and that's not really fair. So Spring Valley recommended that we include only 2 units of water in the base fee. That was the preference of the Spring Valley Advisory Committee. Spring Valley also pays a capital fee that's proposed to remain the same. And then we've made a number of adjustments to the tiered rate structure. Under tiered water rates, higher levels of use are charged a higher rate per unit of water. It's kind of like electric peak pricing. And tiered rates have been heavily examined in court cases, so we were very careful to assign specific costs to these proposed tiers, and the tiers better align with average usage statistics for the Spring Valley area, where Tier 1, encompassing 3 units to 9 units of use, is the average use. 9 units is the average use, and then peak use and peak cost is assigned to Tier 2. So, there's a lot of economics we can talk about behind the scenes, but the overall story is that we want to better align the rate structure with actual costs and current best practices. So after that November rate structure adjustment, the future years would be just increased by the proposed revenue increase year after year. Okay. So here's an example bill of, you can advance it, thank you. An example bill of an average customer using 9 units of water per bi-monthly period. So this current customer pays $64, and all of their use is in that free water allotment, the free base fee. Under the proposed rates, this customer would be billed for water usage in that Tier 1 rate component. So it's more proportional to how customers are using the water system. So this customer would have a pretty significant bill increase from $64 to over $100. But that is needed to meet costs and ensure the financial stability of the utility. So moving on to Kelseyville. Kelseyville has about 1,100 connections. Kelseyville has had inflationary rate increases each year, but it's not enough, unfortunately. Kelseyville is covering its costs, but just by a slim margin, and Kelseyville has run down its emergency reserves and fund balances. So to keep up with cost increases over the next 5 years and to fund some capital improvements, there is a need to increase rates at the percentages shown here. So Kelseyville has a very unusual rate structure, a very kind of old school type of rate structure where water service is based on like per dwelling unit, per motel room, per RV space. That is not industry standard, and so we're proposing to transition to a fee structure based on meter size, which is the widely accepted industry standard rate structure. Next slide, please. So that first year, we're readjusting the rates based on meter size, and then each subsequent year, we're just increasing by that overall cost of service applicable to the utility. So Kelseyville's current water rates also are a tiered rate structure. Luckily, this one doesn't have a base fee, which includes a lot of free water. We found that Kelseyville's average use is 18 units per single-family home. So we are expanding Tier 1 from 15 units to 18 units to better align with current water usage statistics. Although Tier 1 now, although you get more water in Tier 1, it costs higher per unit. And then Tier 2 is peak or overuse usage above 18 units, and that is at a higher cost. So we're assigning peak usage costs to Tier 2. And then all other customers, so that'd be all multifamily commercial customers, are getting an average rate. And that is because there's a wide variety of commercial customers. So a big supermarket might blast through all its Tier 1 usage right away, even though they're using like a very steady, non-peak level of demand. They're just so large that they have to use a lot of water for their business purposes. And then you can see here the 5-year rate proposal for the volume rates. So I'll give you the overview of Kelseyville Sewer, and then I'll show you a quick bill impacts analysis. Kelseyville Sewer is in really bad shape. It's operating at a deficit. It's spent down its fund reserves. So there's a big jump in the overall rate revenue proposal. And we did do outreach to the Kelseyville service area. We had a pretty well-attended meeting. We had about 30 people there or so. Explain the rate adjustments. There was some shock at first. These are pretty high rate increases, but there was an understanding that the utility has to meet its costs and is not doing so currently. So sewer rates for both Kelseyville and Northwest are fixed charges based on land use type. And the underlying apportionment of cost is based on flow. So that's the amount of sewer discharged into the system, and pollution. So how much you have to treat the waste that your different customers are discharging. And so your rate structure seemed very industry typical. And the only adjustment was to add a new multifamily category. Multifamily customers have lower flow than single family, so it's more fair that they have a slightly lower rate. So the next chart is the current rate structure. You can just see that there's a schedule of fixed fees based on land use type. I also want to highlight the capital improvement fee at the very bottom of the table. So Kelseyville operations needs to increase its revenue dramatically, but Kelseyville capital, we are proposing a decrease. We don't see the need to have that capital fee so high. We don't have identified capital improvement projects that fee needs to fund. So although operations is going way up, capital is going way down, and that definitely helps mitigate some of those rate impacts. So here is the chart of the proposed rates. So again, not every customer gets exactly that 65%. You can see increase. You can see some categories are higher, some categories don't go quite as high It's a more moderate rate adjustment. And again, that is because we reviewed the underlying flow and pollutant loading estimates of each customer and more fairly attributed costs based on those parameters. And here's the additional rate categories. And then you can see at the very bottom of the chart, the capital improvement fee charged to all customers is proposed to decrease from about $20 to $3. So although other portions of the fee are going up, that part of the fee is going down. And that better reflects the cost structure of the sewer utility. So here's the example water bill for an average Kelseyville resident. This customer is a single-family customer using the average use, which is 18 units. So under the current rate structure, this customer is using most of their water in Tier 1, a little bit in Tier 2, and pays $74. Under the proposed fee, this person is using all of their water now in Tier 1 and is going to pay about $20 more on the water portion of their bill. Under the sewer charges that this typical or average customer is paying, this customer's domestic strength fee, that's the operating portion of the fee, is going way up. The loan fee is staying the same, and then the capital improvement fee is going down. And the sum total of all those impacts to the sewer bill is an increase of about $20. So in total, this customer is paying about $40 more under the rate proposal. So to wrap up with the Northwest utility, Northwest has about 4,000 customers. Northwest has also had inflationary increases each year. Northwest has a very slight operating deficit. It's not terrible at this point, but we need to reverse that deficit and start building up some fund balance to preserve and improve the financial health of that utility. So you can see there are some rate impacts here, the 20% plus 10%. So not as extreme as the other utilities, but there is a need to increase rates. And Northwest's sewer rate structure is very similar to Kelseyville, so based on fixed charges and the underlying flow and pollutant loadings were adjusted for this rate plan. So we have the schedule of fees here. So the typical single-family cost is proposed to increase from about $68 to about $80. And then subsequent rate increases would be 10% and then 3% thereafter. And then again, we kept the rate structure pretty similar to current. We kept the same categories to provide continuity and just updated the flow and pollutant loading estimates. Okay, so to wrap up, we are proposing each utility service area get an increase. They vary. Some are more extreme, some are more moderate. But these rate studies are intended to meet the cost of service. So these are actual budgeted costs to run your utilities. Without rate increases, these would all use up their fund balances and then come to the county and need cash infusions. These utilities need to be financially self-supported by their own rates. So we've assigned a 5-year schedule of proposed fees to get to that level of financial security for each utility. And then on top of the revenue increases, we really focused on making sure the rate structures are more compliant with Proposition 218 and recent court cases. So we're here today to receive input. We'll continue working also with the local advisory committees. We'll finalize the rate reports. And then, as Scott mentioned, the next step would be the public outreach process. So every ratepayer in these districts would get a notice in the mail. They wouldn't be surprised that all of a sudden their bill increased. They get a notice in the mail, they can attend public hearings, they can give their input, and then at that hearing in the fall, they can give public comment as well. And then absent a majority protest, the rate adjustments could be adopted for November. So I'm happy to receive comments and answer any questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Director Harder, did you have anything else to add before we bring it back to the board?
No, thank you.
Okay. Any comments or questions from board members? I have a question. I guess it's an equity question. Spring Valley is set at a 2 CCF, and Kelseyville is set as a 18. So it's kind of like the way we used to do street speeds. If everybody goes 40, then we're going to have to set the speed limit at 40. So, I mean, in the mindset of conservation of water, we're giving single families a whole lot more access to water in Kelseyville than you are in Spring Valley. And I'm just kind of, how does that work?
Yeah, if we could bring up that Spring Valley chart, I can point out which chart.
I know you said that's the average use, but
And it's 9 for Spring Valley.
Yeah.
So, and that's where the
Chart.
tier break happens. So two, Spring Valley Advisory Committee wanted to see something in that base rate, that flat fixed charge. They currently get 12. So they wanted to see something that was in there. We have to be delicate about what we set that amount at. Because as Allison was saying, if there's a user that uses 1 unit and then there's a user that used under the current billing system 11 or 12, they're paying the same. So it's not fair and equitable to the customers in that district. But the defense and the position can be taken that the operation of the water district results in a usage of water for each customer on their behalf, essentially, of a small portion. Flushing the lines out, testing, sampling, those sort of things use up a small portion of the water that can be fairly distributed across all the customers. And then where that tier break happens, that has to be at a place where it can be defined financially. So if the average winter use in Spring Valley, which it is 9, then when summer use happens, the cost to the utility goes up because we're having to exceed that average, so our production costs go up. And that's where that tier break happens, because you can't set tiers arbitrarily. They have to be based on actual increased cost of production. Kelseyville, their average use is 18. So as you pointed out, it's kind of like that speed zone study analogy, that if everyone's driving that fast, that's kind of where the break point is. Similarly here, if everyone's using 18 in that winter use, then those additional costs of production, us bringing on another well, we've got 4 wells out in Kelseyville, those costs can be directly tied to that above average usage. So that's where that tier break point happens. And each district is independent.
I get it, but that's still awkward in the sense of, again, water conservation is water conservation. It shouldn't be based on, have you been using a whole lot of water lately? And if so, we're going to allow you to keep using a whole lot of water, versus if you haven't, we're going to set it up so that it continues to kind of push you in the direction. That's just me. My mind's not logically able to catch on to that. I feel like there's something in my mind that's wrong with that. But that obviously there's a process to follow for any kind of nexus study. This is a nexus study of sorts. So my other one is 9+. If the average is 9, why can't we do a tier 3 to try and persuade people not to use 50? Because again, in the idea of conservation, if we don't set up a high bar where it becomes super pricey, then people could just, they're at 9+, why not just continue using all the water you want and deplete the water source?
Yeah, that's a great question. There was a court case about that. So the San Juan Capistrano court case, it was about tiered water rates, and it was an agency that had a higher tier purely for conservation, purely as a penalty for high water users, and that was struck down. It was determined that there has to be an underlying cost basis for why that is priced the way it is, that high penalty tier. Is it based on acquiring another water source? Is it based on, hey, we have these conservation programs that we're going to put that cost into that higher penalty tier? Is it peak pumping? Is it what other costs can you define for a super peak or penalty tier? And we looked through the budgets and operational data of all the utilities and couldn't specifically identify a cost to go in another or super peak type of tier. So we didn't feel it was, substantiated and would comply with these court cases and Proposition 218.
Yeah, it's got to be defensible. Unfortunately, that was a tool that was, utilized out in Spring Valley, but it's now becomes more of a code enforcement issue if there's illicit or illegal water usage. We fall back on our rules and regulations for the water department and for the water district, and if they're outside of that. But if they're just using a lot of water, and the plant production runs 30%, even during peak summer times, we're maybe 40, 45%. So we're not at plant capacity, we're not having to bring in additional raw water sources, and we're not spinning up and seeing additional excessive costs. That same 1 unit of water costs the same amount to produce, whether they're using 18 or if they're using 50 of them. There's no additional cost to us. We can't penalize them with a conservation tier.
And during a declared drought emergency like we just experienced, at that point, you can set
At that point, things
specific
change.
criteria
Exactly.
of what the conservation strategy is. Okay.
Yeah, at that point, we step into our drought conservation plan, and we can ratchet stuff down. It's an ordinance adopted by the board. So yeah, we have those additional tools in those circumstances.
Okay. And those are all the questions I have. I'll just say I'm uncomfortable, but also stuck between a rock and a hard place. Because where do we get you the funding to be able to continue that? I do have a question, I guess. It's not a question to you. It's more I question the decrease in the capital improvements, because eventually you're going to need those costs covered. So I appreciate that you've lowered it, but at the same time, it gives me pause and concern that the future of that infrastructure is going to need some capital funds to be able to do that. And obviously, the cost of the increase of the rates is for more of the day-to-day than the overall capital improvements that you'll be doing to that. So lots of concern, but also I don't have a better idea of how it is that I can keep you whole and keep providing the service, because it's absolutely necessary.
If I can speak to the capital reserves, we have healthy capital reserves in Kelseyville. That's why we can reduce the amount. We're not eliminating them, and we're not without capital reserves. So we have capital reserves there to do projects. It's just at this point in time, there's no larger scale projects beyond what our reserves already exist to justify keeping that fee in there. And the way rates are structured currently, it's a 5-year plan. So, you know, the hope of the department is to get through all of our rate structures, modernize them, bring them compliant with current Proposition 218 requirements from current legislation, current rate structures and billing types, and then we'll be revisiting that on a regular cycle. So we shouldn't end up in a spot where we're, again, behind the 8 ball and we're looking at 20 or 30% increases in that first year. Most of these rate increases, by the time you get to year 5, you're looking at a 2% or 3% increase, very, you know, equitable with the cost of living increases. And so the next cycle, we hope, will be there as well. And if at that point in time, we have capital plans in place that say, okay, we need additional capital funding, that can be a component that can be revisited.
Is there a plan for capacity studies?
Yes. The plan was to cycle through all the rate structures because the rates are pretty outdated, and then go back and cycle through capacity.
Okay. Thank you.
Just had a question on the loan. What's the loan amount that's owed at Kelseyville? Because in here, there's a loan fee. You
I
guys know
think that
that?
was paid off, but
I just had a curious question because it was in there at $14. No, just wondering how far it goes
oh,
back.
yeah,
and
that's the one.
What's left on the payoff.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of additional information, because we understand that that revenue is then put in a debt service payment fund and is separate
Yeah.
from the rest of the rate revenue.
And I'm not sure off the top
You
of my
could
head.
just send me an
but I
email,
can
just
get you an email with
curiosity
it.
on
Yep.
that, you know, looking what it goes back to when it would be paid off, because whatever improvements you make, you know, if there's an opportunity somewhere down the road to get that
Yeah,
loan cleared out,
that
and
paid
there's
out, yep.
$14 savings for everybody, you know? and-
Yeah.
So anyway, just curious if you could send that to me, I greatly appreciate it.
Supervisor Green?
Yeah, appreciate the presentation. Prop 218 stuff is hard. My challenge is mapping, so forgive my ignorance of these CSA areas, but I couldn't find maps on our GIS, and there's no maps presented here. So on Northwest, sewer connections, any of those within the Scotts Valley area, or is it all North Lakeport?
North Lakeport and then around the North Shore. So it goes North Lakeport, Upper Lake, East Lucerne, Conote, and Paradise Valley.
All right. And then Kelseyville apparently extends as far west as Corinthian Bay and Finley?
Corinthian Bay is a separate assessment district, but it does discharge into the Kelseyville system. So they've got their own billing structure, but they discharge into Kelseyville. And they pay, the Corinthian Bay district pays Kelseyville for the treatment and disposal.
I guess when the notices go out, they'll obviously get to the addresses that you know about. Is there any way for the general public to just spin up these maps of these various utility areas?
If they're not on our website, we'll put them up. I've got a really good 24 by 36, which identifies all our district, and I'll get it up on our website.
Okay. In addition to the mail notices, obviously, we want to be able to anticipate if there's opportunities for additional public input. And on the west side of the Kelseyville district, depending on Corinthian Bay feeds into this, feeds into that, if the CIP is envisioning any potential for future tie-in with the city of Lakeport, and I know that's a pipe dream that's way off in the future, but at some point, Corinthian Bay and Points West will either continue to kind of sit under this modality, but eventually we're going to talk about purple pipe around the lake and stuff like that too, right? Mm-hmm. So none of that is envisioned in the price modeling here.
Correct.
All right. And if we did some big project like that, we'd have to come back and revisit these during the next 218 cycle.
This would probably be expired, and we'd be cycles down the road. The full circle project I envision is probably 10 or 20 years, 10 years probably. 20 years for the local collection systems, probably then to be tying into it as a disposal method. But
So it's premature to even ask about that now.
I think we don't have enough information at this point, yeah.
All right. Thank you.
And I believe that regulation is that these rates can only be used to process for those that are paying the rates. You can't use the funding you receive through the rates to expand or do any other new infrastructure. It's only to utilize in the operation of what they're already paying you for. You'd have to get new money in order to do any kind of expansion to whether it's connected to the full circle or connected to anything else. I don't pay rates for my thing, so you can expand it to someone else's property. Yeah. So it's very enterprise funding specific to what it needs to be used for. I see no further pens up. Let's open it up for public comment. And no hands in Zoom, and no one getting up in the chamber. And this was just a receiving of the presentation with any questions or comments, but no action needed at this moment. Do you need our blessing to move forward with Prop 218? Would that be better as a motion to say we accept this study?
That might be helpful. It's not agendized, though, as the items. I don't know if...
Okay. So y'all have to bring it back to us in order to initiate the Prop 218?
I don't know.
As far as the Prop 218 issue, it is not part of the board scope on the recommended action, so certainly staff can look into that. And it is a presentation. That's the part of the recommendation here is just presentation. If your board does wish to move to receive the presentation, just for clarification, it would be doing so as the Board of Directors for Lake Osan. I believe that's the case. Is that right, Director Harder?
Yes.
Or
Well, no, I
Administrator
think
Harder?
this one is actually for, they're sitting as Board of Supervisors or Board of Directors,
Okay.
because we have CSA 2 in here as well.
Anybody want to entertain a motion to accept?
So do we go as sitting as Locasan or just as the Board of Supervisors? Because it's a mixture. Should we do two motions?
Can
one
you
for
do all
each?
three?
Just a
Because
question.
Kelseyville County Water Works District is separate from Lake Osan as well, so we have all three districts represented here in this presentation.
Or if it's unnecessary to make a motion and just say thank you for the presentation.
Yes.
Correct.
Then maybe we'll just leave it at that.
As long as you have what you need to go forward.
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for entertaining the questions. Okay, next, you got a laundry list of things. Our 612 item, consideration approval of occupancy agreement for the Canocti Gardens LLC development in Clear Lake. Director Harder.
Thank you, Chair. So this item before you is regarding the Canocti Gardens Development Project, which is a 102-unit low-income project in the city of Clear Lake. Construction is finalized, and the project is seeking, wow, that seems really hot, echoey. They're seeking connection to the public sewer system. They've paid their capacity fees. We've done the inspection of their on-site stuff. It's passed that satisfactorily. But the hydraulic capacity analysis identified mitigation improvements that needed to be done. So those are currently under design. The design is not anticipated to be completed until October, I believe. But we want to work with the developer and get them in. They've got some funding requirements. They got some IRS requirements. We want to get them in and using the project sooner. So it was determined that we could probably set up a bypass that would bypass their flows to a spot in the collection system downstream of where the impact would happen, so that there would be no negative impact on the sewer collection system. So the agreement before you today has gone through iterations back and forth with the development and is structured such to allow occupancy to account for their prorated share of the cost of those mitigation improvements, their prorated share of the cost of the bypass pumping system, and the cost of the hydraulic capacity analysis that they were required to complete. And that's essentially what it is. That's where we're at.
Thank you very much. I know that this was an item that we had discussed when it came to us, where there was a belief of a potential impasse and to postpone the opening of the apartment complex. Appreciate the conversations that continued from there, and a workaround of sorts to try to make this work, and I appreciate your flexibility and the conversations that we had with the developer as well as the City of Clear Lake. I know there's one thing here. Obviously, the big issue was the capacity, especially with the I&I during rain and infiltration into the system. And so this is slated for the project to begin sometime in October. It's possible that the weather might change before then. I didn't see a specific date, and I don't think there needs to be, but is there a plan of maybe August or September to look at installing the bypass, or are you waiting to see the weather changing and then installing the bypass?
I believe it's specified in here by October 1st is when we would expect to see the bypass installed. If we see weather before then, I don't anticipate we're going to see heightened flows. The analysis showed that during the summertime, the project flows did not exceed and would not cause issues. It was only once we got into that wet season that they would cause issues. So from our perspective, we would envision the bypass going into effect, that first couple of weeks of October, probably kick it off October 1, have it in place before the wet season officially begins October 15th. And then the development project is without worry. But once this agreement is signed, they're free to occupy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you very much. Any further comments, questions? Supervisor Green.
Just a question on the bypass. How do you arrive at what a proportionate share is?
So the engineer that was putting it together looked at all the flows in the area, and they looked at the project development flows based on their number of units and their fixture counts, et cetera. And it was about 10.6% is what they estimated. So the anticipated cost of the bypass is $285,000 plus 20% minus 15%, so in that range. So we've set their proportionate cost at about $25,000, so about 10% of that from the low end.
We wouldn't be building the bypass were it not for the desire to hook up this new apartment complex, right? So are there any other flows going into the bypass?
Yes, there are flows upstream, but those flows upstream would need to be bypassed for the improvement project regardless. So because you have to take that particular section of sewer main out of service in order to upsize it, you have to bypass anyways. So we would have a bypass, but our bypass wouldn't account for the additional flows. So their proportionate share covers their additional flows out of the total flows that are being bypassed.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Let's open it up for the public. Anyone wish to speak on this item? I see no one getting up in the room and no hands in the chamber, and bringing it back to the board for action. CAO Parker or Mr. Guintavano? I'm not sure who clicked.
Mr. Chair, just based on the what is proposed as the recommended action, for clarification, your board is sitting as the
Board of Directors.
Board of
at Lake
Directors for
Osan.
Lake Osan, and it would be a motion to consider for approval of the occupancy agreement for the Canocti Gardens LLC development in Clear Lake, and also to authorize the Lake Sand District Chair to sign.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much for that assistance. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I know we have, let's see here, what do we have? We're going to go and start with social services, CalWorks outcome, and did I call it out at the wrong time? Let's do Director Ewing. I don't think this one's going to take a while. 7.3, consideration of change order number 1 to the agreement with Regia, I think, Construction for the East Lake Sanitary Landfill Phase 1 Cell Expansion Project, bid number 23-32, for an increase of $1,054,248 and a revised contract amount of $6,215,911, and authorize the chair to sign. Director Ewing.
All right. Good afternoon. Lars Ewing, Public Services Director. With that summary, I'll just set the stage that the East Lake Landfill right now is under construction for an expansion project that I think is clarified here. Your board approved a contract with Regi Construction on February 27th for the dollar amount is $5,161,663. The scope of that project that was determined at that time did not include certain portions of certain aspects that were later determined to be required from the Water Board, Central Valley Water Board. The change order number 1 summarizes them. The main issue there is what's called an underdrain. It's very simple, but essentially it's a large, along the bottom of the entire cell, a bunch of rock, simplistically, is what we're talking about. The issue is groundwater separation. We need to ensure that we maintain adequate groundwater separation. The bottom of the landfill needs to have adequate separation from any water that would be coming up from below. We have the data to demonstrate that we were and still are maintaining that separation. The Water Board came back with recommendations which our engineer agreed with, that the underdrain would add an additional factor of safety for slope stability, ensuring that basically the landfill doesn't slide away. That's really what we're talking about here. So we requested a change order from Regi Contractors. They submitted the change order that is there. There's a few other items that are required. There's an erosion control mat on a drainage ditch, and then some aspects of the project that need to be taken out as a result of these projects, the additions here, and then the addition of 28 days to the project. So the result is a little over $1 million, $1,054,248,000.
Thank you very much for your summary. Any questions or comments? And while I know the answer to this, the funding for the increase will be coming from?
Yeah, we have an enterprise fund and a reserve fund specifically for landfill expansion. We have appropriations this year. It carries over into next year. For the appropriations this year, there's enough to fund what is going on now. We will add on for your 24-25 budget for the future work.
Yeah, I think there was like 14 million in that reserve.
In the reserve, there's about 12 million now, and that's for future phases as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Let's open it up for the public. Any comments, questions? Anyone wish to speak on this item? No one in the chamber? No one in Zoom? Bringing it back for action.
Move to approve change order number 1 to the agreement with Reg Construction for the East Lake Sanitary Landfill Phase 1 Cell Expansion Project, bid number 23-32, for an increase of $1,054,248 and a revised contract amount of $6,215,911, and authorize the board chair to sign.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going back to item 7.2, CalWorks Outcome and Accountability Program, CalOR. Still trying to figure out where the R comes from. System Improvement Plan, SIP. And we have...
I have a PowerPoint for you. Do you
want to bring it up, or do you want me to connect my laptop? Okay, where's your little? Oh. Is it via Zoom? Or you can do it on Zoom. I can be on Zoom. I will send it.
Good afternoon.
Hello. Working out the technical difficulties here and getting this PowerPoint up so we can share with the public as we're talking. Okay. Sure, sorry. Yeah, we're just working out the technical difficulties here, getting the Zoom up, or getting into the Zoom so I can share our PowerPoint presentation. I don't think I'm still in the Zoom. Sorry.
I don't think this item will come to that.
I hope not.
Review.
You never know.
The R for or, review.
Oh. Guess I didn't spend long enough looking for it.
Okay, there it goes, slowly but surely. So while we're working on this, thank you, Board, for having us here today. My name is Rachel Dillman Parsons. I am the Director for Lake County Social Services, and with me here today is Teresa Schoen. She's our Program Manager over the Welfare to Work program, also known as Employment Services, and it is her and her team who have put together this presentation that we will be viewing today. The CalOR SIP has gone before CDSS and been approved, so now it is waiting on your signature for approval. And this presentation that we are bringing you today is just a summary of the full SIP. Okay, I think I'm finally in the Zoom. All right. And I'm going to hand this over to Teresa.
Thank you. So to answer your question, CalOR, the acronym stands for CalWORKS Outcome and Accountability Review Program. The R is review. And this is the state's effort in order to improve the CalWORKS program, the services we provide, and ensure that the outcomes that our clients achieve are the best possible. And a lot of that has to do with how we do what we do, and if there are ways to streamline and facilitate things, we want to make sure that we're looking at that through an equity lens and making sure that everything that we do from at every level makes sense. So you can switch. Just a quick reminder that CalWORKS is California's version of the federal TANF program. TANF is Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, and this specifically looks at the Welfare to Work program. So CalOR, this is our first 5-year continuous improvement program. It's a cyclical, long-term look at the outcomes for families. So we evaluate our processes, we look at service delivery, we pull in all the data we can find, whether it's economic, demographics for the county, to see if our clients are aligned with the parameters of the people living in the county, if we're missing anybody, and then we take a human-centered approach where we held a full week of stakeholder forums. We had staff from every level of the organization, from office assistants all the way up through the director, to look at each individual piece of what we do. So right now we're in 2024. Last year I came and did a quick presentation on the Cal CSA, which is our county self-assessment. So from the results of the assessment, we built this system improvement plan, which went to CDSS in February, and they signed off on it, and the next step is board approval. So all the things that we look at, we want to get a holistic picture, not just of the data, but everything together tells a story for our clients. One of the things that's required for CalOR is a a peer review. So each county chose another county to pair up with that was similar in nature, not necessarily in size. And so we partnered with Yuba County, and they came to visit us, and we had a full day where we looked at all of our processes, how we do things. It was nice to have another county's perspective, their ideas, and then we reciprocated and went to Yuba County and did the same for them. She's skipping the picture with her in it. So when we looked at the performance measures, of which there are many that the state has picked, we could pick 1, 2, or 3 that we want to focus on in this first 5-year cycle that we want to improve on. So the things we looked at were, what performance measures can we make a measurable difference? Which ones will improve other measures? And what benefits our participants the most? So just a quick look at what some of the data looks like from the dashboard. And the CalOR dashboard is a public-facing dashboard. If you went to CDSS and you typed in CalOR dashboard, this is what would come up. And it gives you an idea of where we land compared to the state on average. So the ones where the red arrows are pointing down are ones where we are not measuring up to the rest of the state. And the ones in blue, we're doing fairly well. The orange is statewide, and the blue in the graphs is Lake County. So we are also looking at long-term performance measures, and this happens to be a brand new one that started last year. And this is wage progression. So when people leave the program, it's nice to know what they're making. If they're off aid, are they continuing to stay in the job long term? So this shows us in the first quarter, obviously that is an average, and people get a job at any time during that quarter. So the first quarter is always going to be lower on average. And rate of program reentries, we've noticed that we have quite a few participants who get a job, they leave, and then they're right back within months sometimes. And so what we want to do is really look at that, see what we could do to improve that and lower that rate of reentries. So these are the 3 measures that we chose. Orientation timeliness rate, which has to do with how quickly we get them through the door. Appraisal attendance rate, are we engaging them and effectively getting them into the program? And then program reentries, which is a long-term measure. Oh, that's neat. So the orientation attendance rate, this is where our starting point is 38%. That means basically 4 out of 10 are attending orientation. That means 6 out of 10 are not. Why are they not attending? We're losing them before we even get them in the door. Appraisal timeliness has to do with, once they attend orientation, how long does it take to get them in, get them appraised? And right now we're looking at 60, 70 days. And the state, for this measure, wants it done within 30 days. And then reentries will be a long-term measure. What can we do to ensure that people who leave with a job stay employed? So we have 3 teams, one to deal with each measure, and this is to just let you know who the team leaders are for each team. Orientation attendance rate is being handled by Sophia Pena. Appraisal timeliness is Julian Roby, and they are both supervisors at Employment Services. My mouth is dry. And program reentries, I'm heading up that team. So with orientation attendance rate, the first thing we want to do is look at what data can we gather. So we have already started reaching out to participants who do not attend, calling them, finding out why they're not attending. Did they forget? Did we not send them an appointment letter? Were they not engaged in the program? Did they not understand after they left intake? So all those things will help guide us in finding strategies to get them in the door. So one of the first things we want to do is look at how welfare to work is presented in eligibility when somebody applies for CalWorks. And a lot of our eligibility workers don't really know what we do in welfare to work, so it's hard for them to promote the program. So we're going to look at adding a phone script, teaching our staff in eligibility what the welfare to work program can do. For conducting orientation, we're also looking at the number of days between case approval and orientation and where we can tighten that up. We have a 10-day requirement where we send a letter to somebody or we contact them. We cannot schedule an appointment unless we give them 10 days. So we do that 3 times in a row for 3 different appointments. That's a month wasted right there where they're just sitting, we're just sitting. So we're finding ways to tighten that up. And then a performance incentive program. We have performance incentive funding, which is not a ton of money, but it's enough to where we can incentivize certain achievements that our participants make. So if we can bring that and make it visible from the time that they apply, ooh, you can get an extra bump of money for attending orientation, for doing your appraisal. That we hope will also engage people and increase the numbers attending. So expanding the options for attending orientation. During the pandemic, we put in place virtual orientation. And while that's good, if people are still not attending, we're finding ways to do it where we can have an online video. They can watch it at their leisure. They don't have to wait for an appointment and come into the office or do it over the phone. So we're going to be looking at multiple ways that they can attend. With OCAT and appraisal, this is where our biggest gap is right now. And a lot of it has to do with childcare in the county. We cannot bring somebody and require them to come in to do their appraisal until childcare is in place. And that can take weeks sometimes to find a placement for them. So if we can find ways to tackle that barrier and streamline the process, then we can maybe achieve that 30-day limit. So some of the strategies would be to address their barriers to completing appraisal. And again, we're gathering data to make sure that what we think are the reasons are the reasons. So we're reaching out, finding out what's taking so long, where we can tighten up the processes internally. So with appraisal timeliness, addressing their barriers to completing appraisal. If we offer it to them when they can attend at a time that works for them, that's going to ensure that they are attending. We can schedule it in person if they want in person. We can do it virtually, or we could even go to their home and do it there if we needed to. Fully staffing positions is key to all of these measures. Without the staff, I don't think that we will meet our goals, but we're still going to move forward and do the best that we can to meet the goals. So, yeah, I kind of touched on this already. This is how we schedule appraisal, and we found quite a few ways we can tighten that up. So that should be a quick and easy fix. So with program reentries, we're gathering the data to find out why they're coming back on aid. Are they losing their jobs? Are they being laid off? Were they dissatisfied with their employment? And so we all know that education increases opportunity and expands the jobs that you will be qualified for. So we are going to be educating our staff on better connecting people to jobs that have promotional opportunities, that are in fields that are expanding. And so it's not just educating our clients, it's educating our staff as well. So on the dashboard, wherever you see an asterisk for Lake County, That means that we had fewer than 11 participants. It's de-identified data, so we can pull it from our system to find out what the actual numbers are. But on the dashboard, it's just unavailable. Smaller counties run up with this issue all the time. So with recidivism and people coming back onto the program, what we found out so far is that we have a lack of industries that pay a living wage. When you have little education, there's not a lot of choices. And so that has an impact on people coming back on the program. We had the pandemic, which of course is not the greatest time to be, to set our baseline from moving forward. Low education rates in the county, and before CalWorks 2.0 came out, our focus was on job first, get a job now. And with CalWorks 2.0, the states realized that it's better to keep them on aid a little longer, take it step by step to connect them with jobs that they will be satisfied with. Sometimes that's education. They can stay in education for 4 years if they need to, get that degree, and they're much more likely to stay employed. So we know that layoffs happen. We know that people lack the skills that they need to get better jobs. A lot of the time, they will come back and say, well, it just wasn't the job for me. It wasn't a good fit. So it's dissatisfaction with the job. Or they're in a position where there's no promotional opportunities, or it's just low pay, and that's not going to support a family. And so we want to make sure that we place them in positions where they can succeed. So strategies, we want to connect better with EDD and understand more about our county's employment opportunities. Right now, we work with our participants, but we don't have the boots on the ground knowledge, and so we're pulling that from EDD. We're also working with CareerPoint because they also have better data than we have available. And once we know where the jobs are, what the industries are, we can guide people into positions where there's better opportunities. Any questions?
Thank you very much for your presentation. Director Delman Parsons, do you have anything else to add?
I would like to thank Teresa and her team.
In the microphone.
I would like to thank Teresa and her team for all of the effort that they've put into this. It has not been a small amount of effort, especially given their short staffing, and they have a big job in front of them, but I am confident that they will be able to do that and help more of our families receiving cash aid get better outcomes in terms of long-term employment.
Thank you both, and I have Supervisor Green with his pen up.
Thank you for the presentation. Number one, congratulations on getting the state to sign off on it. It makes our job easy here today, so we're not going to change a word on its head. That said, page 22 of this report did pop out to me as far as orientation attendance in that Yuba County. Your peers do have a focus more on in-person eligibility interviews, and I guess here, both between short staffing and what have you, you're either a majority phone or all phone for intake. But the question I had was, Yuba County strikes me as being very similar. It is very rural, so we do have the population center in Marysville, but people seem to be able to make it down the hill to have those interviews. And coming out of COVID, the personal touch can't be overstated, and when we provide services to people, even at an early intake phase. So, I'm not going to second guess if you have to do all phone all the time at this point for staffing, that's the way it is. But have you found any variables between when you provide in-person services and lower recidivism rate? That's not right, but better outcomes when you're having more consistent, more in-person contacts versus all phone all the time? Because if it's all phone all the time and it's a Zoom, it's just a checkbox. They're not going to be invested in this process.
Sure. So we leave it, I think, to customers to decide how they want to receive service right now. We offer both. Teresa may have some data on who is more successful in participating, but we do offer in-person interviews. We do have in-person services for employment services. So,
With employment services especially, that is key, having that in-person, one-on-one relationship. And it's so hard to develop that via Zoom or over the phone. It's just not as conducive to building trust. And if you're going to influence somebody and convince them that they can do this, that they have the wherewithal to go to school, to achieve a better life for their family, you need to develop that trust. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful. So for my staff, they come in at least a day a week to do in-person connections and have appointments with people across the desk instead of over the phone. With eligibility, I know that's much more difficult, and it's a script, it's a quick in and out for intake. It probably doesn't have the same needs to do in person, but from my perspective, it's vitally important. So while we are offering telework, and most counties do offer telework, very few are strictly telework.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you for doing this.
So I appreciate the perspective on the outcomes. I think our goal is always to get people to utilize your services as a support system to get into the better place that we all want them to get to, higher levels of independence, higher quality of life. I know that you mentioned Career Point. We have a couple supervisors on the North Bay Workforce Alliance.
Yep, one
Said it backwards. And I would definitely suggest, please let them know of any needs that maybe aren't part of the normal program that is available that could be helpful for us, so we can maybe advocate for those things. And I know that I just spoke to you earlier about the what I'm working with Woodland Community College to try to get them to implement classes. I think the hard part is, because I agree, the personal touch makes so much of a difference, but then if we send them to school, 75% of all the classes are also virtual, and so you lose that personal touch where you're motivating somebody to get into that better place. But I think we can get there. I think we need to get there. Two things on the random. You mentioned daycare. I know that Director Parsons is on the first 5. At least that you went to your first meeting last time. Definitely a hot topic when it comes to daycare and how is it that we can keep providing more. If there's room in the ranch, maybe it could be a drop-in that can be helpful. That would be amazing.
Yes, I have kicked that around. It's not off the list, and in fact, we have thought about maybe using welfare to work participants to provide that service to others. So we're thinking about things.
Might be helpful for employees, might be helpful for those that come to the ranch. I'm glad you're already kicking the idea around. And then the other one was, we just had a conversation, I think you both were here for that during our DEI conversation. It'd be interesting to know those who have the recidivism rate, those who fail to come to orientation. What does that demographic look like versus the general demographic that you're already dealing with and serving, just to kind of identify, is there a greater loss in specific groups versus others?
That's a really good measure that wasn't in mind for this, but we do have the data, so I think we can pull it out.
We have a good amount of data. What we don't have from the state are the tribal TANF numbers. They have an aligned program, but none of that is included in the data we receive from the state. So I think that's an important piece, and I want to reach out to the tribes and see if we can't gather that data to see what those outcomes are as well, because when we talk about the whole county,
Right.
it needs to include everybody.
Right, because there's not just one agency doing the same type of service. Yeah. So those were my comments. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm glad the state's already signed off on it, and looking forward to your, I think, 2 next report cards that you have coming that was on the calendar.
The progress report.
Yes, the progress reports.
Just had one comment, and I think I say it every year. The question would be, so we have the program, we want to get them into these programs, get them in better jobs and opportunities. Is there any way to do an intern program where they can move right into Department of Social Services in some of the, if you have the right applicants and stuff like that? Because it would be kind of training your own workforce type of thing. And I know I always bring that up, and I do sit on Workforce Alliance in North Bay, and it's that long-term success. I think we've got some reports that there were some challenges there, like 4 quarters later. Are they still working? What's going on? But if we get them hired right onto the county, boy, we've got some inside information on what's going on, how successful they are, so.
Absolutely. We did have an OJT program several years ago before the pandemic. That we had some issues with the way the funding was structured, and participants have to be able to test, pass the background check to be placed in a position. And the way the state restructured it, we can't have training positions for ESE. That's their new OJT program, is Expanded Subsidized Employment. It has to be placing somebody in an open position, just as if they are full-time. That idea being they transition into full-time at the end of the 6-month or 12-month training period. So we're working on bringing that back to social services in some aspect, because right now we don't have that. We have an ESE program that we contract with Mendocino Private Industry Council in order to implement that, but that is funding that most likely is drying up with the new budget. So we're hoping we will continue to do that, but we will probably manage it in-house rather than have an outside entity contract.
So, long story short, yes, that's also on our radar. Some of our long-term employees actually came to us through the old OJT program, and they're still around, so we would love to bring that back.
Just to follow up on Supervisor Sabatier's comment about reaching out to Bruce Wilson with the Workforce Alliance in North Bay. Just they're looking at a pilot program over in Mendocino, kind of an intern where Workforce Alliance with WIOA dollars, WIOA, right? I'm saying it right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's so many acronyms. But it is a new program they're talking about trying to roll out in Mendocino, and it's with all the government agency departments doing an internship where it's partially paid. So it was just presented last week, so maybe there's a conversation we can have and we can model something after that, so down the road.
All right, if there's nothing further, let's open it up for the public. Anyone wish to speak on this item? When you came up for your presentation, we lost our public in the chamber. So nothing in the Zoom room, and we'll bring it back. Thank you very, very much. This is a 5-year?
It's a 5-year cycle.
And so at what point will we be maybe annually through the workshop or things like that, just to kind of get an update on how things are going, the momentum towards meeting the new opportunities that you hope to meet with the changes that you've gotten approved by the state?
So we have a progress report due next year and one the year after, and then we start the cycle all over again. So the 2 progress reports, I'm sure, will be sent to you. If not, you may have to sign off on it. That hasn't been decided yet at the state level.
Okay.
We do expect with the first 2 measures to have a quick change and see those rates improve. The last one being a long-term outcome, that may be years before we really see the numbers move up.
Looking forward to that. Thank you very much.
Nothing further, Chair. I move to approve the CalWorks Outcome and Accountability Program, CalOR System Improvement Plan, SIP, and authorize the Chair to sign.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
And with that done, just a quick housekeeping item. I did see a budget amount on the staff memo. I'm assuming this is not a budget item.
No, it's not.
Thank you.
Ignore that. Yes, I was not going to mention that. It was too late at that point. So we're going to pick up the second 7.1, consideration of the following appointment to the Big Valley Advisory Council. From what I remember reading, there's obviously that we have 4 applications and 1 position open, and want to open it up for Supervisor Green and Supervisor Pyska to discuss who they would like to see.
Yeah, so we had a resignation before the first meeting by our alternate, and so I would like to suggest that Richard White, be appointed. Sort of fills a similar niche with the with the seat that the previous person did. He's been really active with the Kelseyville Business Association for a long time, and I think he would be the perfect alternate.
Any other comments? Supervisor Green?
I'm just trying to refresh my memory on these. So this is the category is public member, but serving as an alternate for the primary appointed public member. Is that right?
It's an alternate.
Okay.
All right, any other comments? Then let's open it up for the public. No one in the chamber. No hands in Zoom. Bringing it back to the board for action.
I move that we appoint Richard White for the Big Valley Advisory Committee as the alternate.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I believe the only thing left on our open session is our calendars. Did I miss anything else? Everyone else is saying please no. So let's go ahead and start with our calendars. Supervisor Green?
Well, I see a whole bunch of conflicts on Thursday. So I see COC and EMCC. We have budget hearings, so that's not going to work out real well. Looks like going to a Farm Bureau dinner on Saturday. I don't have an agenda yet, but Scotts Valley Community Advisory Council should be meeting Monday. Next Tuesday, I don't know how that time is going to work out depending on our, we won't be meeting the 25th. So just for those in the Lakeport area, Lakeport Fire Protection District is going to be having a workshop, not an action agenda meeting. But the main fire station in downtown Lakeport is definitely on its last legs, and I think the workshop is designed to gather community input on next steps for the fire district and where and how it should be headquartered. And that's about all I got.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Simon?
Yeah, obviously, budget meetings the rest of this week. That's the big lift. We're off tomorrow, obviously, celebrating Juneteenth. And as you know, there was an event, it was announced earlier, MAC, Middletown Arts Center, has something going on down in Middletown. So if you have time, please join that. I want to thank the Art Centers for putting that together. I don't have the time right now. I'll get it to you. I think it's in the evening. I think it's about 5 o'clock. And then kind of a clear calendar here for a while. I will be out of town for a few days next week, but back in town probably on the 26th. And don't really have anything on the calendar. CAO, we won't be meeting with you until we get back here, and then all the way through the holiday weekend. So obviously we'll most likely have some constituent meetings. I know there's one big project in South County that we just want to make sure stays on track. And other than that, that's it. Please do your part. Be prepared, have a to-go bag. I just want to make that announcement. It is fire season. We are experiencing that. I know it brings back trauma as soon as that smoke comes up. Probably all got calls yesterday, just on what it is. So please be ready to go. Pay attention to your surroundings and be safe if you're going to be out there in the wilderness. So that's it.
Thank you very much. We have a redo.
Can I backtrack real quick? I got contacted about APC LTA special meeting on Monday. I assume both of you are unavailable, correct?
Unavailable.
I'm unavailable too. I let
Okay,
them know.
so I locked myself in, but I didn't want to step on your toes.
No, please step.
All right.
Forgot about that.
Thank you very much for being available.
Okay.
Supervisor Pyska?
Yep, budget hearings Thursday. I've got Cabaret Council. Hope I can make it there by 6:30. We could maybe spread out to Friday a little bit more so I can get to that meeting. And then Friday, budget hearings, and then I will be back here after the 4th.
We all hope we have higher hopes that we can be done by 6:30 on Thursday. Vice Chair Crandall.
All right, real quick, I'll just go over last week. We had attended what was called the Shigum Days in Nice. It was on the shoreline. Robinson Rancheria held it. All of the departments were there, different agencies, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, California Fish and Wildlife, Water Resources Department of Water Resources, Lake County, all of the different groups that deal with that were there. And I'd like to say that I caught my first fish ever. It wasn't through a fishing pole or anything. They actually had a boat where you shock fish and put it in the middle little cooler for them to study them, then throw them back in. So I was able to actually catch my first bass, pulled it out of the water, and I was like, it fell out of my hands when I tried to grab it, so it just shows you I'm a horrible fisherman. I wanted to say that in front of Scott, but I didn't want to extend that portion of it. But yeah, that was interesting, and it was really good to see kids involved to see that as well. But that was that day. It was pretty successful. People enjoyed it and shared some information. Clash Against Trash took place Saturday, and it had a lot of folks there. I seen what they do is they line up the garbage bins, and then they put them in the back of the garbage truck, smash them down, and they filled one truck and they switched out. So I'm waiting to hear the results of it. I know that I filled up 4 trailer loads to helping folks in the community, and just grabbing stuff you see on the side too as well. So just getting all that going. So it was pretty successful. I feel like a lot of other folks were happy about it too. So tomorrow, I actually am going to the RCRC meeting. We have the executive committee meeting, despite the fact that we have a holiday, so I'll be going to that. Of course, Thursday and Friday, we have budgets. We'll be doing that. Let's see, the 24th, will we be having the meeting on Monday? Okay, only if we want. So the Pillsbury meeting, we have a meeting with Cal Wild, is it? I think I'll be the one attending that, because are you even in town Monday?
I don't think I will be. I thought that was Tuesday or Wednesday.
I may be wrong. I have it on my calendar. It may have changed. I know that on Wednesday there is the...
Oh, the one up in Lake Pillsbury. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. That's this weekend, the 22nd, I think. But the other one is Monday, the 24th. Cal Wild on a public visioning process. They're meeting with us. Apparently it says, I don't know if it's a placeholder or not. It might be a placeholder. That may be why I have it. And then we have on the 26th, PG&E and Potter Valley Project meeting with PG&E. I think it's still a placeholder as well. West Region Town Hall. Let's see. And then we have LCRA, which I will probably be the one attending that. Will you be here? No? I might have to do it Zoom, but they'll be okay, right? Yeah. Let's... Yeah, and then I'll just be doing, the week of the holiday and whatnot, of course. I'm sure there's more going on, but I might be taking some time because I never get to, so I never do it. So we'll see on that when it comes to the July 1st week. I know that we're talking about another initiative. We'll see if that falls through, but that would be on July 1st. We're looking at something in these chambers. But again, waiting for the congressman on that. Then back here on the 9th for our board meeting.
I forgot to report out
Please.
that last Thursday, it feels like it was several weeks ago, but we had the big home hardening event, and it was really exciting. The California Wildfire Mitigation Program held their monthly board meeting at Riviera Heights, and we had all top brass from CAL FIRE, including our state fire marshal and OES. And then we did a really amazing media event at the first home in the state to be completed. And then we had another advisory committee meeting after with Fire Safe Council from the state, RCRC, CSAC. So all of our friends were in town. It was so great to have them for a really good, positive day. Up in the Riviera Heights clubhouse, so they got the best views in the county. So it was very, very awesome. And the most important thing is that we have shown that we can deliver, and we're capable of being innovative, and that we're leaving behind the victimhood of poor Lake County, which is what I told them never to say to me again. So it was really awesome, and I think we showcased that we have a lot of potential to carry really important programs and initiatives forward.
Thank you for that. Is that it? Okay. I have on my calendar a day off to complete all of my defensible space. and which looks good, it just needs to be finished. Then budget hearings all day on Thursday, which I want to hope that we will just be done at 5 p.m. and reconvene on Friday, since we have already 2 days set for that. And Friday we'll be doing the same thing. There is a City of Clear Lake meeting that I will be going to the evening of Thursday, and I do need to meet with Peg on Friday towards the evening, and so hoping that we can finish that day before it's too late as well. On Saturday, I too will be going to the Farm Bureau dinner. I'll be sitting at the Blue Zones table. We've been doing a lot of work together, and we wanted to support the Farm Bureau in that way. And after that, I will be MIA until we come back on to July 9th. And definitely enjoy and be safe during the 4th of July festivities. Make sure to be firewise about what you do out there. And that is my report for this meeting. And our last item is closed session, 8.1, Public Employee Discipline Dismissal Release. We will now go into closed session, and we will be coming out of closed session.